Hello everyone and welcome to this video tutorial. In this tutorial we are going to go through the basics of oblique planes, where we take a singular point and using the trace line method we bring it from one elevation down to the other, doing the same with a line and then doing the same again for simple 2D objects. So all I've done now to start this video tutorial off, I've just outlined my page. I've done a 10mm border around the edges and I've done my title block 10, 5, 10 and just put the information at the top. I've come 80mm in from the right side border for the keywords column. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to get our XY line. So to get our XY line, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to half this section here, which is just going to be 12.5mm from the top of the bottom border. So come up at 12.5. I'm doing it in red and I'm going to go all the way across to this side here. So next thing, I'm just going to label it X and Y. Now, to introduce us to oblique planes, we're going to draw in our vertical trace and our horizontal trace. So I'm just going to get my 60-30 degree set square, and I'm just going to pop on over to the left side of the page and I'm going to draw it in black. What you'll be doing is you'll be doing it in pencil. You're going to draw in 30 degrees, going up, then flick it around, and you're going to draw 30 degrees then from this point here going back down, just like so. Now, so similarly to the previous video, we're now going to label everything. We know that this is going to be our vertical trace here, so vertical, vertical, vertical trace. And we know that this here is our horizontal trace. Now, let's pop it into our keywords over here. Again, we're going to just keep on repeating it just to familiarize ourselves with the vocabulary. So we have got our vertical trace. And then we've got our horizontal trace. In the last video, we also determined that the XY line is our line of intersection. And then in brackets, we know that that is going to be 90 degrees. So, relating back to the previous video, we labelled our vertical trace and we labelled our horizontal trace, but we also know that there are two lines on the XY line. So to recap it, we're going to label this V, and we know that this is going to be H. So if we are looking in at the front elevation, which we know this area is here, this is the front elevation and this is the plan view. If we're looking at the front elevation and our vertical trace is here, we know that our horizontal trace is going to be on the XY line. So we're going to label it H. Similarly, when we're looking down at our plan view, we can see our horizontal trace in full, and we know that we're going to be looking at our vertical trace as an edge view, and therefore it lands on the XY line. Therefore, we're going to label this V. So it's V, H, V, H. To really familiarize ourselves with the terminology, we're also going to label this as our front elevation. And then down here, we're going to label this as our plan view. We also know that our front elevation, or our vertical trace, is also going to be known as our floor. Pardon me, it's going to be known as our wall. So let's pop it in here, our wall. And our floor is going to be looking down on the plan view, which is our horizontal trace. So let's call this our floor. One of the rules in oblique planes, and we're going to write this down over here as well. If we have a line that is parallel to the XY line, it is going to be parallel to the trace line. What I mean by that is, forget that, just delete that bit there. One of the rules in oblique planes is we've already determined that we've got our two lines on our XY line here. Our vertical trace is here, and then our horizontal trace is going to be on the XY line here. Okay. Similarly, in the horizontal plane, we've got our horizontal trace here, and we know that our vertical trace then is on the XY line. We know that if the horizontal plane here is parallel, which it is, in the XY line, this vertical trace here is going to be a true length. So what we're going to do is, in green, I'm going to pop in here, true length. Similarly, in the horizontal trace here, we know that our vertical trace is going to land on the XY line here, and it's going to come up to about here. So our vertical trace is coming along here, and we know that if a trace line, or if a line is parallel with the XY line, it is going to be a true length in the other view. So our vertical trace here is parallel to the XY line, therefore our horizontal trace here is also a true length. Let's write that in. So one of our golden rules is our trace lines are always going to be a true length. So over here, I'm going to put it in red. The trace lines are always true lengths. That is one of the golden rules when it comes to oblique planes. If you have a vertical trace going off in this direction and a horizontal trace going off in this direction, they are going to be true lengths. Always. They will always be true lengths. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how we can get some points. If we have points up in our vertical wall here, how do we get them down to our horizontal wall? The way that we're going to do that is by a rule called parallel, down and across, or parallel, up and across. So the way we're going to do this is as follows. I'm going to pick a random point. I'm going to pick this point here, and I'm going to call it A. I want to get point A down into the horizontal trace. The way we do that is as follows. You are going to get your set squares, and you are going to make sure that your set square is lined up to your vertical trace so that it's parallel. Go to the point that you want to bring down, and you're going to bring it parallel down to the XY line. So you brought that down to the XY line, and then from the XY line you're going to bring it straight down to the horizontal trace, like so. And once you've brought it right down to the horizontal trace, we are going to bring it across. Bring it straight across. To get the point, all we're going to do is bring our set square up to point A and bring it straight down. And here is where we have identified point A in the horizontal trace. So let's call that A1. Let's do it again. I'm going to try and find this point here. I'm going to call that B. Again, what we're going to do is we're going to get your set square, offer it up to the trace length, or the vertical trace, then bring it over to the point, bring it down to the XY line, that's where it touches the XY line, then bring it straight down to the horizontal trace, that's where it hits the horizontal trace, and then we're going to bring it straight across. We don't know where it stops. How we know is bring your set square straight up to point B, then bring it straight down, and we know that this is going to be point B. If, for instance, this time I wanted to find a point that was in the horizontal plane, let's call that point C, and I wanted to bring it up to the vertical plane, we just do the exact opposite. So again, we're going to get our set square, line it up to the horizontal trace, offer it up to the point. We're going to go parallel to the trace line. That's where it hits the XY line. Then we're going to bring it straight up until it hits the vertical line, the vertical trace. And then we bring it straight across. We don't know where it stops, but the way that we find out where it stops is by bringing the point straight up. And here we have identified point C. So, the rule that I like to follow is, we're going to write it over here in our keywords. Step 1, you're going to go parallel to the trace line then point 2, bring it straight up or down from the XY line until it hits the trace line. And then step 3, from the trace line, bring it straight across. And then finally, step 4 is to determine the distance where the line or where the point falls in that line. You're going to then bring the point straight up to that line. So, finally, bring the point straight up or down until it hits the line. So let's go through these rules here together one final time. I want to find a point that's right here. This is point D. Let's follow our rules. So, rule number 1, we're going to go parallel to the trace line. So, we know that it's going to be the horizontal trace because it's in the plan view. So, go parallel to the trace line. I'm going to do it in heavier, I'm going to do it in black. That's step 1. Step 2, bring it straight down or up from the XY line until it hits the trace line. So here it is on the XY line. This time we're going to bring it straight up. And that's where it hits the trace line. Now, step 3, from the trace line, bring it straight across. For the sake of this, I'm just going to do it in pencil. Bring it straight across. And now, point 4, bring the point straight up or down until it hits the line. So here, we're just going to bring it straight up until it hits the line. And here we have determined that this is D. And now, just for the sake of continuity, I'll heavy this section in here. So, to keep in mind, rule 1, go parallel to the trace line. Let's look at the D example that we've just done. Go parallel to the trace line. So here are our parallel lines. Bring it straight up or down from the XY line until it hits the trace line. We brought it straight up until it hit the trace line. From the trace line, bring it straight across. So once it hits the trace line, bring it straight across. And then bring the point straight up or down until it hits the line. From this point, we brought it straight up until it hit the line that we brought over from our vertical trace. And from that, we were able to identify that this is point D. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move over to the right side of the page and we're going to do the same thing again, just to recap and reiterate exactly what we've been doing. So this time I'm going to use my 45-degree set square. So coming on over here, I'm going to draw my vertical trace just over here, and I'm going to go the whole way up. You don't have to necessarily go the whole way. And then from this point, bring it straight down, just like so. Again, what we're going to do is we're going to, for continuity, label our vertical, horizontal, vertical, horizontal. So we've got our V, H, V, and H. In this example, instead of bringing just singular points down, we're going to try and bring a line down. So I'm just going to pick 2 random points, and I'm going to call this 1 and 2. And I'm going to connect point 1 and 2 to form our line. Now what we're going to do is we're going to try and find this line in our plan view. So, keeping in mind, going back to our rules, we know that the first thing we need to do is we need to go parallel to the trace line. What I would strongly recommend, work with 1 point at a time. So, I'm going to work with point 1. Bring it straight down. That's point 1. I'm going to label it. Then we bring it straight down to our horizontal trace. I'm going to label it. That's point 1. And then I'm going to bring it straight across. I don't know where it lands, so we just bring it straight down, just like so. And we know for a fact that that point there that we've just found is point number 1. Now we're going to do the exact same thing for point number 2. We're going to get our set square, offer it up to the trace line, making sure that it's parallel. Bring point 2 down to the XY line. label it, bring it down to our horizontal trace, label it, and then bring it straight across. We don't know where it lands, but we can bring it straight down until it hits the line, and I now know that that for a fact is point number 2, and I know now that I have found the line, just like so. What we're going to do now is let's try a shape. So we're going to try and find a 3-sided polygon, also known as a triangle, but this time we're going to start it from here and we're going to bring it up here. Now I'm going to pick 3 random points. 1, 2, let's make it a rather large triangle. 3. We're going to connect all 3 points up to form our triangle. And there's our triangle in our plan view. So now what I want to do is I want to find the triangle in our front elevation, also known as our vertical plane. The first thing you always do, make sure to label your points. Because I've already used numbers, I'm now going to use letters. So I'm going to call this point A, point B, and now point C. So again, make sure to work with 1 point at a time. Let's go back to our rules. We're going to make sure that we offer our set square up to the trace line, making sure that it's parallel. We're going to work with point A first. So parallel up, that's where it hits the trace line. Label it. Bring it straight up until it hits our trace line. Label it. And then bring it straight across. We don't know where it lands, but let's just bring it straight up then from our plan view up into our front elevation. And I now know for a fact that that point there that we've just found is point A on our triangle. Now for the very same thing again. We're going to offer the set square up to the trace line. We're going to work with point B this time. So parallel to the trace line, there's point B on the XY line. We're going to label it. Bring it straight up to our trace line. There's point B, again, we're going to label it. And then we're going to bring it straight across. We don't know where it lands, but we can bring point B right up from our plan view. And there is our point B in our front elevation from the plan view. Now, one final time. Set square up to the trace line, point C, parallel, then up and across. Then bring the point straight up, and we know there's point C. And there are all of our points needed to recreate our triangle. A saying that I like to use to ensure that I'm doing it right is called parallel, up and across. Parallel, up and across. Parallel, up and across. Or, in the instance here, parallel, down and across. Parallel, down and across. So, in the notes here, what I'm going to do is we're going to do parallel, down, slash up, and across. And that will really help you if you ever get stuck on how we get 1 point down or 1 point up from either elevation into the next. If you were bringing the points down from the vertical plane to the horizontal plane, it's parallel, down and across, parallel, down and across. If you were getting the points from the horizontal plane up to the vertical plane, it's parallel, up and across, parallel, up and across, parallel, up and across. Thank you very much for watching this video tutorial. I hope that you found it useful, and I will see you in the next one. Take care everybody, and goodbye for now.